Okay, we're good to begin whenever you'd like, Anna.
Okay, then I call this meeting to order at 10:06 of February 28th. I'll read the land acknowledgement. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hadaway-Darrong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. And I thought that maybe in the future we can take turns reading the land acknowledgement, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Is there a declaration of interest apart from mine?
Not for mine.
Okay, I have one. It's a minor thing. It concerns the housekeeping item of the Monroe House, which was started by the former owner a few years ago. However, the house now belongs to Tim and me. That's why Joe will speak to this item on the agenda. Okay, then we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a mover and oh, wait a second. I would like to add one small item to the agenda. We should address the Tourism Advisory Committee. It's not on the agenda. We will probably not make a permanent decision on that today since there's not all of us here, but we should at least address it. Okay, now can I have, yes?
Did you see Sydney? Sorry, Madam Chair. Sydney had a question. So you see that little.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, on the Tourism Committee, there's no longer a representative from the Heritage Committee. It is just all members at large and then council.
Oh, so is there no member of the Heritage Committee allowed on this committee, or is it just that there isn't one right now?
There isn't one right now, and if they wanted to be, they would apply as a general member.
Yes, and that's exactly what we want to address today. But because there's not all of us here, that's why I said we will probably defer the decision. What's your take on that, Joe, in terms of deferring it until we have more members present?
Well, okay, through you, Madam Chair. I was under the impression that the makeup of the Tourism Advisory Committee, we did modify the terms of reference a while back, and I know they've been modified again, but it was specified earlier that there was to be a heritage history person, special events, a representative from the business community, a fourth one. And when Tony Vandermas was chair of the committee, he suggested that when the applications were being accepted at the beginning of a new term, we modified the language so that preference would be given. It wasn't required that those positions had to be filled, but preference would be given to people that were applying that filled that particular need. Did we eliminate that completely out of the new terms of reference?
Through you, Madam Chair. The new terms of reference for the Tourism Committee just states at-large members 8, councillor 1, and mayor 1. So there's no representative right now. If that was to change, I believe it would be the Tourism Committee could modify their terms of reference to add in someone from the Heritage Committee again.
Okay, I think they should.
Yeah, so let's address that later and make a request to the Tourism Committee to change that.
Sure.
Okay. All right, then I'd like a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. Okay, Joe has moved, Tim has seconded. Everyone in favor? Yeah, okay, then that's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the meeting of January 31st. Can I have somebody to move and second?
Well, I never received them.
Oh, it came with the package.
Pardon? I only got the agenda.
No, you have to scroll down.
Yeah. The
If you
package
scroll
that
down.
Sydney sent out included everything. The PowerPoint that Eva put together, the agenda, the minutes, and our work plan.
Okay, I guess my computer didn't print everything off
Yeah.
because all I got
Madam
was.
Chair, if I can just mention, the third page is mainly blank. And I was in the same situation as you, Joe. It was when I sent it to my husband to print. He said, "Oh, Eva, there are like 39 pages here." I said, no, just a few, 3. So it's that blank space created, I think, the same issue for you as it did for me.
Okay, yeah, okay, I get it.
Okay. So what do we do? Can we still move and on the minutes of January 31st and adopt them?
Yes. I'll
Eva
move.
has moved. Can I have somebody to second? Tim? Okay. Anyone all in favor? Then that's carried. Okay. Next, correspondence. This is the first thing I hear about the 200th anniversary of the official turning of the sod. It's for information purposes only at this point. I imagine that the city would like us to be involved in that ceremony, which obviously is an important one. Do I have this correctly, Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, a member of the community just reached out to us and thought that you might be interested in knowing that the 200-year anniversary was coming up. So we put it on the agenda just so it can be on your radar going forward.
Okay. And that's how we'll leave it for now. We have a really full program today. We probably won't be speaking in detail to this particular item. It's over 1.5 years ago, but we'll keep it on the agenda so it doesn't get forgotten about and that it stays on our radar, because obviously we would want to be involved in that. Second correspondence item on the agenda are the proposed changes to the Ontario Heritage Act and its regulations under Bill 23. This concerns the slide deck that Eva assembled. This is a major discussion item today, so I suggest we take care of the housekeeping items first, get them out of the way, and move this into the work plan section where Megan also listed it anyway. Is that okay with everyone? Do I have to pass a motion on that, Sydney? Or can I just decide that we talk about that once we've taken care of the little stuff?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we should pass a motion just to be safe.
Okay, so can we pass a motion that we, since this is a very important item to talk about, that we move it to the work plan section of the agenda?
Sure.
Is that okay? Yeah, Joe has moved. Can I have a second? Tim has seconded. All in favor? Eva, is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, then that's carried. So, Sydney, do I also mention any correspondence between the city and me about items that are concerning heritage properties at this point? Or like I, for instance, had an email from Matthew concerning well, actually, he had forwarded an email to me concerning Trinity United Church. And I had a note from you to get in touch with Lexi Teal concerning the Stone Store.
Through you, Madam Chair, if you like, you can discuss those now, or you can discuss them during roundtable.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I had corresponded with the city about these items and also with the 2 persons involved. We'll address them later in the meeting when we have taken care of the things that will hopefully just get out of the way quickly first. So financial, first of all, budget. Are there any news on our budget?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are still working on finalizing the budgets for the committees, so we do not have the final amount for each committee as of yet.
Okay.
For invoices, Megan Burbeck does have both of the invoices, and she is currently in the process of processing those and getting those paid from last year.
Okay, great. Any, yes, Councillor?
Madam Chair, through you, this is a question for Sydney. At our last meeting, I addressed Matthew regarding any carryover from our previous funds as our timeframe was cut short due to the election. Do you have any word from Matthew on any carryover?
Yes, Sydney?
So through you, Madam Chair, there is not carryover from last year, so it will be starting fresh as of January for the budget.
Okay.
Okay. Eva?
To you, Madam Chair. I think I asked this question at our last meeting. A budget is being set without our defined work plan. Are we able to, down the road, if we need to, reapply for additional budget funds?
Okay, thanks very much. Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, the committee always has the option to make a motion for council for additional funding or however that looks, and it would be up to council if they would like to pass that motion.
Okay, great. Good to know.
Yep.
Invoices for payment. As far as I know, an invoice has been sent for research done by Sarah King to the clerk's department, and also an invoice has been sent for the yearly maintenance of the website. Is that correct, Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. Usually those will go to the staff liaison, so Megan Burbeck will take care of invoices, and she is currently in the process of having those processed.
Okay, great. Yes, Councillor Tim.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Maybe Joe, you could help me on this one. I believe it was Tom who used to look after the invoices in the past. Does this mean that the committee itself will no longer have anything to do with invoices? I mean, some will surely come to our committee and then we'll have to disperse them, or how is it? How are we going to keep track of the invoicing and making sure that some of the things that happened well in the past don't happen again, that invoices are paid on a regular time? So I don't know, Joe, if you know if you're going to be receiving any of those, or if we do, or Sydney, perhaps, you know.
Through you, Madam Chair. When we had our last term, at that point, the structure of the committee was just supposed to be a chair and a vice chair, no recording secretary, no treasurer. And Craig had spoken to, I believe, might have been Donna Del Vecchio at the time as the clerk, and she allowed us to maintain my position as a secretary and Tom as treasurer. But what we also did was we streamlined the process of the bill payment, where the bills invoices came directly from people we were requiring service from, went right directly to the finance department, because we had a problem years ago, depending on when an invoice came in. If it was just a day after our committee meeting, then it had to wait 30 days before we got a look at it. Then we submitted it to the city, and we may be taking our meeting the day after a council meeting. So then it had to wait another 2 weeks before council got a look at it. Mm-hmm. So it was intended to streamline the payments to the people that were submitting invoices. So Tom was more or less keeping track of the balance in our budget, was mostly what he was responsible for.
Okay, so I assume that still stands. Invoices go directly to the finance department, and which is how it should be. Otherwise, delays are just, far too long.
Yeah.
And is that also the way it is handled according to you, Sydney?
For you, Madam Chair, I can confirm with the finance department and see if they would like you to continue sending them to the finance department, or if they would prefer it to be to the staff liaison first. but I can bring that back to the next meeting, or I can send you an email after this.
Okay, great. Eva?
Yes, and to you, Madam Chair. I have in some of my notes, the idea of us going back to our terms of reference and ensuring that all of these kinds of things, which are very important to the operation of the committee, are addressed. And I would suggest that this is one of those items. We need to be very clear on anything to do with finances.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Joe?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. See, we would still get the invoice coming in, but technically we approved the purchase if we want to buy, say, some bronze plaques from McGee Marking Devices. We already knew what it cost was, and there was a motion put forward in a meeting for us to go ahead with the purchase. Now it would just be up to council to approve that purchase. So that was the whole idea behind establishing a process so that we're also streamlining it too.
Yeah. Obviously, that would be our preference, Sydney. So I don't know whether any letter has to be sent to the finance department to request that to be maintained, or whether it automatically will be, because that's how it was handled for the last little while. So, yes?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can start by just talking to the finance department after this. I can go send them an email, see what they would prefer, and then I can get back to you guys about how they would like to proceed with the invoices.
Okay, good.
Okay, good. All right, Beaver Dam's book sales. Does anybody know, Tim, Joe? Do you know? Yes, Joe?
Yeah, the books, I currently have them here at the house. When Sarah had them at her house for some time after we bought the last batch of books. She didn't want to keep them in her place, so I just said, I'll take them. And I'm not too sure if City Hall still has any at City Hall. There are some over at the Lock 7 Viewing Center. I would prefer if, instead of the books being kept in my house, that they be stored over at maybe Lock 7 Viewing Center. That puts the responsibility on the possession of them and the sale of them through the city hands. When they do get sold, that purchase price, I believe they go for $15 or something like that. That money goes into a heritage reserve fund that Black Hack has, and I'm not even too sure how much money we have in that fund. It's not for us to use for purchasing like operating expenses like paperwork or anything that we may use. It was a fund that was set up for us to access to use for education purposes.
Okay. I also have 5 of those books. They were given to me with all the paperwork that Craig handed to me when he retired as chair and I became chair. So we can add those to that pile that you have. And yeah, I agree, those books shouldn't be in any of our private homes. They should be kept in one of the city's locations.
Okay. We can finalize that.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Anna.
Hi, Linda, how are you?
I am so sorry. I had a lot of trouble getting on this webinar. I used the link and all the rest of it, but I could get on, I could see all of you, but I wasn't there.
Okay.
And you couldn't
right.
hear me. And I must give my regrets for Ray because he had an emergency student difficulty that he had to deal with. So
All right.
his apologies too.
Okay, well, welcome to the committee now.
Glad to be here.
Okay. All right, then let's get to business. Property. Oh, were there any comments? No. Okay. Properties. Beaver Dams Church. Any news on the Beaver Dams Church?
Yeah, I wasn't able to access the meeting. Apparently, what Dave Cowan said was Zoom changed their invitation format, and I think, Linda, that's probably why you had problems getting in, because we're getting the last meeting for the Tourism Advisory Committee, I was using the link, but it wasn't recognizing the meeting ID and not letting me in. Dave sent out invites for the Beaver Dams meeting, and it was reconfirmed that everybody received it, but I did not receive the Zoom information. He indicated in an email that you, Linda, you didn't get it. Bob Halfyard didn't get it, but he sent me an email, and he's updated that they have agreed to go with the portable washroom. They have a price on it. They still have some legalities to deal with the hookup to it. And one other thing that they're dealing with that has to be done in order to locate the portable washroom is to do the land survey so they know where the property line is. But that's what he updated me on for what the committee was dealing with, the most important issues at the time.
Okay, great.
I believe the painting will happen in the spring too. Painting
What
of
was
the
it?
interior, painting
Oh.
of the interior
Yeah,
will be done in the spring.
Yeah. Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I just want to add one other thing. Joe basically covered the meeting, but I did mention to them as well that regarding the placement of the porta potty, it's a little bit more sophisticated than a porta potty. I want to say, but that they should talk to Heritage as well to just, you know, make sure everything is compatible with location. And I know there are some requirements that need to be met, so that is going to be a little bit more challenging, but I do hope they come to Heritage and say, what do you think about this? So we'll see.
Okay, noted. All right, installation of, Joe.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor O'Hare. Yeah, Craig and I did mention to Dave some time ago when they were talking about washrooms, whether it was going to be a permanent attachment to the facility or portable. And we recommended then that if it was going to be portable or attached, that it be put at the back corner of the facility, so it wasn't out at the facade, so that it would look in and wouldn't interfere with the look of the cemetery as well. So I think they're going to keep that in mind, but it is good that you pointed out that we keep them on their toes with that. On a side note, I think what we should do as our committee, it's been done in the past. I think we should reach out to Dave and have him address our committee, the Heritage Committee, on an update on what the Friends of Beaver Dams have done over the past year. He's always been willing to come and talk to us and listen to our feedback, any concerns that we may have. So I might suggest that we do reach out to Dave.
Okay, I will. Or,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can there be a last name with Dave?
Dave
I'm new
Cowan.
to this committee. So. Who's Dave?
Cowan.
I'm sorry.
Cowan.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, is that it in terms of comments on the Beaver Dams Church? Yes, okay.
Oh, one more thing, Madam Chair.
Okay, Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava, I just might point out that Dave Cowan's the chair of the Friends of Beaver Dams committee.
Okay, thank you.
Installation of history plaques. This is an item that is just on hold until the spring because of weather issues. The plaques are ready to be installed, and it had just been deferred until the spring when we have better weather. We might need to talk about the Stone Store, though. We do that when we tackle new business because the Stone Store has just recently been sold. Any comments? Yes, Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, when these installations take place, are we going to have a little group out there on site as well, or are they just simply going to be installed? I think we should be there, right?
It could be nice.
Joe?
In the past, see, what we're doing was we're getting caught, or sorry, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hicks. In the past, when we've been doing the designations, like the last maybe 6 or 7 years, the plaque and stand installation has been part of the designation along with the plaque that's mounted on the house. So that was already in place when we came to the house to do the designation ceremony. We've got a lot of properties in our inventory that are designated that don't have the history plaque in front of the house. So what we've been doing is we've been consulting with the homeowner to get a location where they want it installed. At that point, we reach out to the works department. The works department comes out and does a locate for services, and they have essentially just installed it on their own. We've never had any kind of an unveiling for the history plaque itself. If it's the preference of the committee to do something like that, then that's up for consideration.
Councillor, Eva.
Madam Chair, I have a question first, but then I want to speak about the importance of letting the community know that this has happened. This is a feel-good exercise, and we want to educate the community about the importance of heritage. But my question is, how are, for example, the Dobby House and Stonehouse, how were they selected? And was there any thought given, for example, to the integration of these plaques? I've seen the one at your house, Madam Chair. So the importance of these plaques when it comes to trail development, when it comes to the tourism development, and tourism and trails are very linked, so that when people are walking or they become aware of the historic nature of a certain trail, right? It attracts people from other communities to come and see this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry. I'm fine.
If I could, Alan Lund did a walking tour of Old Thorold. It was a brochure. It should be in the tourism, the tourist bureau. It was in the tourist bureau. He did a walking tour from the old tourist, which is now history. I don't know what's happened to that, Joe.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava, you've got two questions there that need to be answered. The first, the reaching out. We have in the past, when I've been on the Tourism Advisory Committee, the Tourism Advisory Committee tourism website has a sidebar, 30 things to do in Thorold. And we would advertise on their website that there was a designation coming up. We would reach out normally to the local newspapers. We used to have a lot of success with Niagara This Week when there was a reporter, Paul Forsyth, was really pro-heritage. He was a representative for the north side of the Niagara Peninsula, and then they moved him down to the Port Colborne area. And we never had a reporter that followed Heritage Thorold like Paul did. He would be at our designations. He would photograph. So that was 165,000 print editions that went through the Niagara Peninsula, and it was free advertising for us. Bob Liddycoat, the same when the Thorold News was in print edition. Bob and Kathy Pelche were always at our designations doing articles in the paper. So we've reached out, but we've lost some opportunities to get that marketing out. The second question, when we've been selecting the plaques, to touch on what Linda said, yeah, we do have walking tour brochures, and that's what we've been trying to catch up with, is to get all the houses within the walking tour brochure covered. And the way we've been doing this, it is kind of a random selection, but at the beginning of the year when we've been working on our budget, we look at the possibility of how many designations we can do, and then we look at how many plaques we can get installed. So the plaques are costing us about $600. You know, there's 4 times that. And then the designations are about $4,500. So this is where we start hitting our $10,000 to $11,000 budget proposal. The plaques are easier to get completed than the designations because we're dealing with the people that it takes some time to get them convinced that they do need to go forward with the designation. So we know if we can get commitment from the works department we should be able to get 4 stands installed and completed, and then work our way through the inventory. And I mean, when we do the next set, it's always open up for discussion with the committee to see who we should plaque next. One other thing we've had, the plaques that we were using, the history plaques, we were having some problems with fading. So with Craig, I know Craig and Tom Russell went out previously. They looked at the ones that were fading. McGee has now got a newer version that should last about 10 years. So we're also looking at that as catching up to the houses that have suffered some damage on their plaques. And McGee was replacing those for us too. So that's kind of like a program that we are working on to try to get everybody covered and make sure that they stay in a condition that's legible for the public to read.
Councillor, you had a comment, or has that resolved itself?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out, and this follows up again with Eva's first point about feel-good activities in the community. And we should try to make sure we're promoting as much as we can. There's so many events that go on in the city, and maybe we can start to think about how can Heritage LACAC have a presence there to hand out information, to talk to people, to sell books, whatever. But there are so many different events, from Canada Day to downtown when they close off Front Street. So this is a future idea that we should start thinking about, because it's all good, positive promotion for LACAC and Heritage involved. So I just like to throw that out there and start the ideas percolating. So thank you.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I really appreciate your comments, Tim, that yes, there be a recognition and a fun time around the recognition of these incredible homes that are still standing upright. However, I'm someone who lives rurally. What if I decided that I wanted, oh yeah, we need to have one of those plaques, which actually wouldn't make much sense given that we are on a very busy road. But let's say I was one of those people who thought, yes, I need to have one of those plaques. Do we have the rationale to be able to share with those who have designated properties and have an interest in also having such a plaque, but it may not really fit into the purpose that we're trying to establish? In other words, tourism, further tourism acknowledgement, and also acknowledgement with trail development, etc. Maybe there are other programs to develop. So I would just like to put forward that if we feel we don't have the rationale on how selection is achieved, that we take a look at that as well.
I might be wrong with this, Joe, please correct me, but I was of the opinion that every designated site has or should have a history plaque. Do they not? Yes.
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
But are there plans that they all will?
Through you,
Okay.
Madam Chair, that was the plan. And because of the costs associated and trying to accomplish other things during the year, that's what we were doing. We were trying to pick away at the list. These are provided at no cost to the homeowner, as their houses are already designated. We do allow people that have undesignated homes have reached out to us in the past, and they have wanted one of these history plaques. We have done a little bit of research on the property, but if it comes as a request from the homeowner and the house is not designated, cost is borne by the homeowner to have that history plaque installed. So that is it's just another aspect of what we have to try to accomplish during the year that eats up our time and then costs a little bit of money with paying a researcher to do some research on it, a brief research. But I really don't know how we can have a plan in place on how are we going to select the ones that haven't been plaqued yet? I'm not too sure how many are still left. With 53 properties on our inventory list, I would be surprised if we had even 20 of them plaqued right now with the history plaque. So we still got a long way to go.
Okay, but the plan is to, Eva, just a second, to get them all plaqued.
That's what our goal has been all along.
Okay, Eva?
I'm wondering if maybe we need to just have a little tiny working group to take a close look at this situation. As, for example, as a rural property on Merrittville Highway, which is very, very busy, all of the traffic between Brock University, City of St. Catharines, and Welland, traffic is huge. To have a plaque like that on our property, would that be the wisest idea, or might it be something different that can be captured with a cell phone, a camera, some kind of a QR code? Or there is such incredible technology available these days that people are heavily into. So are there other options as well? We have a wonderful little plaque that we have set into one of our stone walls. It doesn't have much information. It talks about the bunkhouse, but that the background information, right? Is there a creative way of dealing with this for rural properties? And again, I don't know how many rural designated properties there are currently in the city of Thorold.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava. You raise a good point, and I think there is a way to recognize it. If we had the history plaque out front, people are going to drive by, they're not really going to recognize what it is. But when you're coming down some of the highways, and this would have to be dealt with, I guess the region would have to be involved, because you're going to be posting a sign somewhere, and they put the steel post in the ground, and maybe there's a little sign that says, and it's going to be targeted coming from both directions. And it might say the boot house, like, and a particular date of historical significance. So you want to catch the person's attention, and it shows the arrow that's pointing in a direction. I mean, we've got lots of signs that are on roadways that point to historic downtown Thorold, the viewing center, etc., like that, the bicycle trail. So I think there's a possibility that for the remote areas, we can have some kind of a signage that's going to be compatible and safe for the people that are driving along, to give themselves time to say, hey, I want to pull over and have a look at this place. And that's probably a starting point where they're going to be able to stop and then read what the plaque says on your front yard.
Tim? Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Great ideas. The more information we can get out there, the better. I'm just wondering, is this something that we can tie in with Mark at the same time while he's building the website? I don't understand the full technology of QR codes, but is there somehow that a QR code can be used and it just brings the viewer right back to LACAC's website to say, okay, Book House built in, here's the history. Is that a technological possibility? I don't know. And should we be addressing Mark and seeing if we can tie it in? Or I know he's got his hands full just trying to get our new website, but I'm just asking. Maybe Joe has an idea.
Not personally. I'm not technically up to that. But when I was on the Tourism Advisory Committee, we were talking about heritage banners downtown, complementing the Prince of Wales banners. And I reached out to Randy Barnes from the Historical Society, and he gave me a list of about 20 names of people that were significant builders of heritage Thorold. And the idea was that we would choose from this list and have the banners made up. Their photograph or a picture of the person's face would be on the banner. It would be complementing the heritage banners. And we were talking about using a QR code that would be on the lamppost that would contain the the banner, but unfortunately, the makeup of the committee on the last term, they really weren't in favor of that particular initiative. But the new committee that's going forward, I raised it again, and Marcia Coppola has reached out to me and she's asked me for that list. So I think it might go forward again. So tying in with the tourism committee, I think because our websites are going to be intertwined with Mark doing the tourism website and doing our tourism website at the same time, I think we can, kill two birds with one stone through this QR code initiative and see what he can make of it.
Yeah, and would it then maybe be possible to add a similar item like these banners to rural properties like Ivas, for instance, where people could access the information about that property online instead of stopping on a busy highway? Is that a possibility?
That's out of my league.
Okay, Eva?
I'd like to suggest that I'm going to take pictures of the signage we have on the road in both directions so that you can see exactly what we do have. And also the wonderful little plaque that we have on our property, but it's set way in. So it will only be a very curious person who sees the signage on the road and feels brave enough to drive into our driveway and go looking for, right, what other plaque there is. But I mean, that doesn't happen. So I think we've got something here that by the 200th anniversary, boy, it's a wonderful celebratory kind of project. There will be more signs created, but let's be really clear for those who have designated properties, exactly how that works.
Okay.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, just on the brighter side, Eva, what are your thoughts on maybe painting across the front of your house in big bold letters, Heritage Home here?
I think that is a great idea, and maybe have some of the downtown kids, the graffiti kids.
All right.
Well, then they will be swimming in your pond right after that.
Yeah, with our big snapping turtles. Perfect.
Okay, Joe.
Just one more comment through you, Madam Chair, to Eva. When we always deal with these history plaques, and I know you're saying your house is set way back, and we've always been respectful of the privacy of the homeowners. So when it comes to the history plaque, we've always kept it outside of the property line of the homeowner, so that the people that were stopping to read this plaque weren't infringing or encroaching on your property. So it's different. Homeowners are different from each other. I'm sitting on my porch in the summertime, and I don't mind if a person walks up onto my porch and sits down and wants to talk about my house, but that's just me. So keep that in mind when we are dealing with signage.
For sure, and we have had our house open for a heritage tour. We had almost 800 people through.
Good.
So we are about sharing our history and the love for history and heritage in this community. But again, I'm conscious about creating also traffic issues on a very, very busy highway. There have been so many accidents in front of our house, beside our house, on our grass, a car that left the road. It took out a tree right in front of our house. So we have to be conscious of that and take creative looks at what else is possible.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, next item. Joe, can you talk about this? Outstanding planning items, Monroe House.
Yeah, this is through you, Madam Chair. This is the Monroe House and the interior items that were in the original designation. And we've never been a committee that's been in favor of designating interior components of a house. And I was involved, and I was on the committee at the time this house was designated. And the girl that owned the house, she was a Monroe descendant. And I'm not too sure who the chair would have been at the time. I think it might have been Ted Laszlo. Pam Mintz would have been the secretary. I wouldn't have been involved in the discussions at the time. I was only a committee member. When they sat down with her and went over the designation procedure, I think it was more emotion on her behalf that she was asking for these things to be designated. And they really weren't necessary. There's a gas light, transom windows. I mean, nobody's going to remove transom windows on the interior of a house. There is it's a stained glass window on the north facade that was added sometime later. You can actually see the original brickwork impression where a full, probably 6-foot double hung window was in that opening, and it was all bricked in. So this was a request that came from the previous owners before Madam Chair and Councillor O'Hare. Michael Bonte and his wife Pascal, they had asked for these designations to be removed. This has been with the planning department for well over 5 years, and it just seems to be, at the bottom of the pile. And this is just a piece of paperwork that just needs to be cleaned up. It's at the request. It should be an easy change, and I think, Sydney, that you can just, put a little hot poker to the planning department and let's get this cleaned up. Thank you.
Yes, Sydney?
Through Madam Chair, Megan Burbeck wasn't able to make it today, but I will definitely connect with her on that and make sure that her and planning work on continuing that process.
All right.
At a
It was
faster
it's
pace.
just one of, yes, Eva?
I have experience with a really incredible project in Haldimand County, which is the Ruthven Park National Historic Site. And in 1992, when it was assumed by an organization, we thought perhaps it would go to the Ontario Heritage Trust, but it was a local organization that took it on. And then we were lucky enough to have the manager of culture for the city of Hamilton become the executive director. And Marilyn Havalka, an incredible heritage expert. And that home had been in the same family until 1992, when it was then taken over by this organization. And something that I learned from Marilyn, it was quite incredible. She was very much committed to ensuring that all of the changes in the life of that home were part of the heritage of that home. So that the Cunning, was it the Cunningham? Sorry, who was the Monroe? The Monroe descendant, I'm getting, she was interested in the designation of this piece of architecture in your home, or was she against it? That's what I'm confused. But I would urge taking a look at the evolution of a site, of a heritage site. And I was in your house. I had the pleasure of seeing your house. I felt it added, it did not distract. That's
Honestly, we will probably never change anything about it. Yeah. It was the request was not put forward by us. From the outside, that window actually does scar the facade. It doesn't really add anything, but that is, we also totally appreciate changes being made. There's other changes that have been made to our house that are part of the exterior designation, and of course will never be changed. But I really also, honestly, I'm just a little bit embarrassed that my house keeps coming up again and again at our heritage meetings, and it's not an important issue. We shouldn't be wasting our time with it. I'd either like it resolved and off our agenda, or Tim, we just as far as I know, the Heritage Committee already decided on this before we even bought the house. And it's just been with planning all this time. But yes, Joe.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava. what really, I understand what you're saying about the really looking at all the aspects of the house and the preservation of it. If that window, just the stained glass window on the north facade, if that was an original window of that house when it was built, by all means, you would look at things that, or if there were gas light fixtures that were scattered throughout the house that were original to the house and they still were there, you might want to preserve them. But over the course of the life of that house, there's been some interior modifications to it, upgrades, improvements, and it reaches a point where you start to lose what's original and what's been a replacement. We do have a couple of properties in the heritage inventory where the interiors are designated because they're totally original to the birth of the house. And that's the Beaver Dams Church and Kiefer Mansion Inn. Any other houses we've got, if you would look at the house that Winsome Steck owns, the Carter Holland house, that's still got its original Gothic windows. And they are part of the designation because they're not something that's been replaced. And if somebody tried to replace those things, you could not replicate and maintain what that facade shows. It still has on the porch, on the right-hand side, it's still got the original coffin door when that house was built, when bodies were put on display in the parlor, and that door was made larger to accommodate the size of the coffins. So there's opportunities that the homeowner chooses to designate an interior portion. I think it has to be kept in mind that it's not something that's based on emotion, but something that can be actually proven through fact that it is something unique. It's part of that original house, and we may not have another house in Thorold that's got any kind of feature like that. That's all the things that have to be taken into consideration when we look at true personal space of the inside of a house and what it's really accomplishing.
I'm just, Madam Chair, my last point on this, if that window was an addition by the members of the Monroe family, because it's called the Monroe House, I would urge staff to also take a look at the evolution of a heritage property as was done with Ruthven National Historic Site, right? I mean, there are changes that take place. How we judge them is really what it seems to be all about. But if the Monroe family added that to their what's called the Monroe House, I think it has to be looked at closely. That's my suggestion.
If I just may make I'm not going to influence planning at all to do this or not. I just would like to point out there are sections in the Heritage Act about this, that later additions should be respected if they enhance the structure of the house. Because if, let's say, a property is still owned by the same family and they put, 40 years ago, they put vinyl siding on the exterior of a house, you also wouldn't say that that is a change that is, of course, hugely exaggerated in comparison. But I should here also mention that most of the original Georgian wood sashes, 6/6, in this house are still intact, with even most of the original glass still inside them. That window was not part of that original set. If the city should decide that that window should be kept because it was put in by the Monroe family, I will accept that, and I'm sure Tim will too. So,
Conversation.
but we'll put it to the planning department, and the window is probably not going anywhere anyway. We are not going to take it out. But Should there be a future restoration of that facade? Should that window be in the way of restoring the symmetry of that facade, which is not there anymore because of that window? But I cannot be the one to decide that because I now own the house. So, but I also don't want to waste a huge amount of time of our meeting on this item. That was exactly the reason why I brought this up, because I don't want it to be on our agenda list for much longer if possible, because, you know, we have other things to work on.
Thank you.
So any more comments about it?
No.
Okay. All right, the website. Just to update you, the photos have been given to Mark. And Linda, do you have any news from Ray about the website? Has Mark been in touch with Ray?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Would you like Ray to give you an email or a call?
If he wants, yeah.
Okay.
We want that website obviously finalized as soon as possible. There's just one thing that we might have to add some items because of the new Heritage Act regulations in Bill 23. So there might be some information that is missing from that website. We'll get back to that when we get to the Heritage Act amendments. Any other? Yes, Councillor?
Through you, Madam Chair, just very briefly, I just want to say a big thank you and congratulations to both yourself, Anna, and Linda. There were some really nice photos taken. So I know that it involved driving out to locations and snapping those shots, and you did a fine job, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new photos on the website. So thank you to both of you for that.
Okay. Linda, I'm sorry I had to choose one of my not so nice photos of the fire hall over your nicer one, but yours was photographed upwards and Mark specified he wanted everything in landscape format.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Heritage permit. What's the status on that? Do we have anybody who can answer that today from the city? Joe, has there ever been a motion brought to council about a heritage permit?
Through you, Madam Chair, we actually had, when Denise Landry was in the planning department, she had a co-op student one summer that was a project that was assigned to her, but we never ever did get anything from her. I believe by the time she may have been close to having something available was about the onset of COVID.
Okay.
So I don't know where any of that could be found, if any of Denise Landry's past projects can be accessed on what she would have had with any co-op students at any given time. Because she did have a couple that were coming to our meetings for different projects.
I remember. Yeah. Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I believe I can make that request to planning, so I can ask them if there's a file that was started, if there's any information, and then that should be made available to me. So I can share that if I can find something.
A heritage permit would just be of huge help when there's a planning application, building permit, whatever, requested by an owner of a heritage property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I can leave that to you, Councillor, to make that request to planning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And this is sort of slightly connected to this change of ownership of heritage properties. We have often talked about this before. It would be good to have an information exchange before the property actually changes hands. Meaning it would be great for the Heritage Committee to be informed when a heritage property goes on the market. And we had also talked about getting an information sheet ready to be handed to the listing agent to be given to any prospective buyer so that they know what they are buying. And this is not a scare tactic. In my opinion, there's nothing scary about purchasing a heritage property, but it prevents misunderstandings in the future. Joe, did you want?
No.
Oh, okay. A heritage permit, of course, would in a way cover that same ground, but that generally only applies once the property has already been bought and a planning application is made. If prospective buyers knew beforehand that such a permit, a heritage permit, for instance, is necessary, or that they have to stick by certain rules when they do work on a heritage property, I just think that would be of immense advantage. Any comments? Can I ask either Sydney or Ashley, is it possible for us to be informed when there is a prospective sale of a heritage property? Yes, Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, unfortunately, I don't know much about planning, but I will talk to the planning department about it to get their input on it. And then I will let you know at the next meeting, or I will send you an email before then.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Eva?
I would also like to take the opportunity to look into other heritage committees to see to what extent this is being addressed by heritage committees and how they're handling it. It's something new for me. I mean, part of me is thinking Heritage Thorold should have a guidebook that speaks to basically the principles and standards that Heritage Thorold is very keen on preserving and making sure that homeowners are aware of. Is there such a guide that you have?
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava. One of the biggest problems that we are faced with in any heritage committee, no matter where it is in Ontario, is getting the real estate industry to understand that heritage designation does not affect the resale value of a house. To this day, we still get real estate agents that through their own methods of marketing, trying to get sales, they see designation as a nasty word. I had a committee member on our tourism advisory committee last term that we got talking about putting history plaques on buildings in the downtown area for the walking tours, even the buildings that weren't designated, just going to be a history plaque. And this is exactly, we want people going downtown and reading. And this one person, the one committee member, was a real estate agent, and he was very confused, and he thought that was a designation plaque and that the property owner would not be happy having it. I had to clarify to him that if we were going to put a history plaque on a building, we would have to reach out to the owner to get his permission. He then stated that the property value would be worth 30% less than market value. So I set up a meeting as the chair of the Tourism Advisory Committee, as a representative of Heritage Thorold. I set up a meeting where Craig Finley, the chair at the time, would speak to the tourism committee about heritage designation, what it all means to get the tourism committee on board. I put this up on our agenda. We held the meeting, and that same person that questioned heritage was not in attendance for the meeting. We also experienced a devastating loss of a very significant historical house 2 years ago, the John Brown House on St. David's Road. We were requesting designation because it was being threatened to be demolished for a development. And with it being a Zoom meeting at council, when this was brought up, Greg Finley, the chair, was invited to stand on the sideline, ready to answer questions that council had. During the course of the discussion, I watched the Zoom meeting. Every councillor did not understand what Black Act was doing. Several of them said, "Don't get me wrong, I love history, but the interior of this house isn't worth designating." And they didn't realize that there's a difference between history and heritage. History you can read about in books at the library, but heritage is a tangible asset, which is that house, which you can actually go up and touch and feel. One councillor even implied that something fishy was going on with Black Act. Our own committee rep on the in council stood up and he said, "I got this report in my hand, this real estate report that says the property value will decrease 30% if it was designated." It was unanimous council. Nobody asked Craig Finley what we were trying to accomplish. And this was the whole idea with us putting together, trying to move forward with having an information session put forward to council, the Tourism Advisory Committee. At the time, just before the John Brown House issue, Denise Landry and Craig Finley were working on a presentation package put forward to council. Had they had that package delivered to them, would it have changed them? Maybe there would have been more debate on what was happening, but unfortunately COVID came and that project was pretty well scrapped. So there's a lot of education out there that we really have to work on.
Just, Madam Chair, a quick response to Joe. In my experience over the last 30 years, I mean, I retired in 2022. There are many communities that absolutely support the importance, value of heritage properties and the fact that they sell for a higher price because of their heritage value. The city of Peterborough, I did a lot of work with them, absolutely incredible work to raise the attention of the heritage, especially in their downtown, exactly as Thorold has done. And it captured the attention of tourists, of people who travel there to see and to experience heritage through the various uses of the heritage properties. So I agree, education, we need to show council some wonderful examples of the economic development strengths that are being promoted in other communities. And that comes right back under municipal cultural planning. Culture is the fourth pillar, right? It's not a poor boy kind of statement. It is a very, very strong, sustainable economic development integration of four pillars, and culture makes everything stand up straight. So.
Thank you for that. Joe?
Rather passionate, yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. To you, Ava. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir when you're dealing with us.
I know.
And I got to say, like from about 2005, maybe up to about 2015, Heritage Thorold, I mean, we had so many people in this community come forward to us asking to have their houses designated. I mean, we knew we had people living in this community that were really proud of the heritage and the culture and that. And I'd say over the past 10 years, we've probably had about at least 7 or 8 heritage properties that have sold. And every one of them is sold for more than market value. We know that the myth that the real estate industry has out here, we just can't get them on our side. They don't do anything in our favor. Any designated house is probably better than buying one that's undesignated, because the insurance companies come in and they make sure that everything is up to code, up to standard. There's no knob and tube wiring left. There's nothing harmful left in these houses. Your neighbor's house, which is not designated, could have been built at the same time. It's still got knob and tube wiring inside. So, it's really tough. We've Thorold, I'd say we've got a really good community here with people. They really do respect what some of the organizations have been doing to bring us to the forefront, for tourism and heritage. I think what Councillor O'Hare was talking about, I think we have to get down to the street level now, and like he says, when you got these downtown events, the car show and stuff like that, maybe we should have a table out there with people representing heritage and handing out brochures and answering questions to people. And maybe it's an inexpensive way to get the message out where we're not relying on advertising. Just try and grab whatever opportunity we can to get these people to listen to us.
Yeah, good idea. All right. Comments? Okay, moving on, downtown facade programs. Sydney, Ashley, any news whether anybody has applied to the downtown facade program? Yes, Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, I have not heard of any applications. However, I will confirm with the planning department and have one of their staff look into it.
Okay, great. Then I'd already mentioned we have to we basically already did that, address the Tourism Advisory Committee. I will contact the committee and ask for a representative of Heritage Thorold to be allowed onto the committee. And then in the next meeting, hopefully we have everybody there and we can choose somebody who will take that over. Does that sound all right to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now comes the meat of the meeting, work plan. First of all, Eva's, first, a profound thank you to you, Eva, for getting together this slide deck, which makes it much easier to navigate this extremely complicated piece of legislation and also find the relevant sections to us. I assume everybody has read it and also familiarized themselves with the parts of the new Heritage Act that concern us the most. Comments or questions?
None for me at the time.
Okay, I have some. Nobody else does. One of the things is, the things that concern us the most, obviously, are our heritage registers and the limitations that have been set for future designations. In terms of our municipal registries, they have to be made publicly accessible on the municipality's website by July 1st of this year. Both the designated and the non-designated lists. Basically, we have to look at whether our lists are up to the standards that are now required to be on those lists and on the municipality's website. In terms of the designated list, I think that probably most of what is required is on our Heritage Thorold website, all the information needed in terms of why this particular property has a heritage value, where it is, the look of it, its history. The only thing is that this information right now is not available through the municipality's website. There's only a list that states the name of the property, the age of it when it was designated, and the address. So there would have to be a link on the City of Thorold's website to get to the Heritage Thorold website in order to access that information. Now, would a link like that be enough, or does the entire block of information have to be transferred to the City of Thorold's website? Does anybody know the answer to that? Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know the answer to that specific question. However, I do know that the link is already on the City of Thorold website under the Heritage Committee leading them directly to the Heritage website.
Okay, So we should then ascertain by July 1st whether that is acceptable. The other thing is there seems to be a new item that needs to be on that list, and that is the name and address of the owner of each heritage property. I'm wondering whether this gets into the realm of privacy breach. We have not made that information public so far, who owns the property. And I mean, the address, if the owner lives in the property, is obviously, the address is clear, but some owners might not live there and live somewhere else instead. Is this something, it has been suggested to me, maybe this should be brought to the Privacy Commissioner and they should be asked whether this item was cleared. Any comments with regards to that, Eva?
Madam Chair, I think it is appropriate for me to mention at this time, I had taken the opportunity in terms of creating the presentation on the amendments to the Act, in reaching out to my former colleagues with the ministry, which is now Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, and also because they could not contribute to my presentation, they said we can make a presentation to you. And so I've continued to explore that. And the good news that I have is that they have provided affirmation that they are willing on March the 28th, that's a Tuesday, to be available to make an expertise presentation on the Act. And it is at that time, if we can accept their response, that these kinds of questions need to be asked. Mm-hmm. They have the expertise, and that's all they are working on is the new heritage standards, policies, practices. There is so much information flowing from very reputable organizations, such as the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, really putting down a lot, as you've mentioned, a lot of the new descriptions of what the expectations are in the Ontario Heritage Act.
Yeah. And would they basically join our March 28th meeting to?
That is Andrew Jeans. He is a heritage expert with the ministry, with the province of Ontario, who lives in Ottawa. He has been assigned by the manager of the unit, the heritage unit. I'm trying to remember her name. Sarah, forgetting her last name. So none of the other members from the Architectural Conservancy or the Ontario Heritage Planning Professionals, no, they would not be there. What I feel is very important is that you get the experts from the ministry responsible for the Ontario Heritage Act to present on that new act, and for you to be able to ask the questions that are extremely important to moving forward. And you've put forward two very important questions, Madam Chair. So I would, first of all, I think at some point we're going to have to decide, is the 28th appropriate for March, which is your meeting. They've said 30 minutes presentation and 15 minutes Q's and A's. I'm sure it can be increased as well. I believe it's a great opportunity. And then in terms of also having conversations with the Architectural Conservancy, that can be down the road, but to start with the ministry expertise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, comments from the other members? Joe, Tim, Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to put forward a motion that we do go ahead with that March 28th meeting with the ministry.
Okay, do I have a second? Linda?
Oh, yes. There we go.
I think
can
it would,
hear you.
I would like to second that motion for,
Okay,
of Joe's.
then, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then that is carried. All right. Eva, can we correspond about how to make that happen?
For sure we can, because I've already had the back and forth.
Absolutely.
And I'm quite happy and copying you for sure. I'm very happy to go back. But what we should have a conversation about is to be very clear on, number one, what the questions are that we want answered. I'd like to feed those to Andrew so that he can, right, he can get ready for it.
Yeah.
And like, I think we need to be prepared that maybe he says, I'll have to get back to you on that, right? There's a
Yeah.
possibility of that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Anyway, we'll carry on.
yeah, but so as a last comment to that, if anybody has pertinent questions, let's maybe gather those ahead of time so that Eva can forward them to Andrew. That's his name, Andrew.
Yes, it is. And I would ask that those questions come to me by the end of the week or by Monday, this next Monday, so that we give Andrew sufficient time, because he's obviously dealing with many other communities as well.
Yeah, but I think that's a good idea to have our questions out there before the meeting. Then this whole thing will be much more streamlined and straightforward than it otherwise could be. So is everybody in agreement with that? Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't speak for the committee members that aren't present for this meeting, but you
Yes,
should send out a memo and stress the importance that,
Yeah. I will do that.
that they send you
Okay.
questions.
All right, great. Okay. There are some of the, okay, there's other questions on there too, which I guess then also should be deferred to an expert, especially with regards to prescribed events. I don't know whether Sydney, you or Ashley can inform me about, or the committee, I should say, whether any prescribed events like zoning bylaw amendments or planning applications have been made to the city since July 1st, 2021, that could affect some of our heritage properties. Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, I apologize once again. I will speak to Megan Burbeck in the planning department and have her send that information to you. Usually we do have a staff liaison at meetings to answer questions like this. It was just due to a training conflict, which is why there's not a member. But I will reach out to her and make sure she gets that information to you.
Okay. The reason why this is so important is that the new regulations in the Act basically tell us that we have to put, or that council has to make a notice of motion within 90 days of a prescribed event. And that is only if the property in question is on the non-designated heritage list. Now, this is backdated to July 1st, 2021. There are exceptions that apply, and obviously, if should we be so lucky to be allowed by an owner to designate their house, but it falls under that category of a property that is impacted by a prescribed event, there are exceptions that do apply the way I understand it. But again, that is probably a question to one of the heritage experts. Am I correct there, Eva?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. any more comments towards that topic? Okay, then one of our work plan items, of course, designations, and Joe had an idea about one particular one. Joe, that's your baby. Why don't you talk about Beaver Dams Park?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. Over the years, we've, from the committee, from Heritage Thorold's point of view, we've always looked at Beaver Dams Park and possibly doing a designation. And it was a previous mayor, Luciani, that put forward a motion that the parks in Thorold should be protected going forward. And so then, you know, fast forward a bit, we've got the park rejuvenation project that goes on. It was all cleaned up. It's beautiful looking. Restored seating area for the bandstand, a new playground area. At that, when there was an open house for the planning, Craig Finley had talked to Mayor Ugolini about the possibility of designation in the park, and he was on board for it. I think what we were really looking at was not necessarily designating the park, but taking a look at Lock 25, which still exists down there, and designating the lock. It's in excellent condition. There's still some original metal hardware from the gate swings that still exist on the lock. And in a conversation with Madam Chair a couple of weeks ago, we were going over some issues going forward. And I suggested the Battle of Beaver Dams Park and the designation of the lock, and the possibility of doing the designation during the Canada Day ceremonies, given that that would be a wonderful opportunity for public relations, because we would have hundreds of people in the park during that designation procedure. So the problem is, it's you know, what we're talking about with the restricted timelines. Is this going to be a feasible project for us? I reached out to Sarah King Head, our researcher. She already has a lot of information prepared. She would need to do some more. She seems to think that she could work within a time frame to give us the information quickly. We would probably have to put forward the information to the committee to get them to read it as quickly as possible so that we can go forward with an intent to designate. We do have, you know, that 60-day period backing up from July 1st. So we'd have to have everything in place by maybe the third week of April. So we've only got a couple of months. One of the problems might be if we do get an intent to designate, like it's going to be the city that's doing it, how quickly can this be put on the council agenda? I mean, it's got to go there ASAP for them to deal with it. They have to understand the importance of what this committee is trying to do in promoting heritage and tourism. They've got to be on our side for this one. I think another question that might have to be asked is the criteria when we look at the designated criteria now in the updated policy of the Ontario Heritage Act. We're looking at remnants here, artifacts. We know the historical significance of it, but when it comes to the point scoring system, how do we get there with the fact that you know, I don't know. We all know that it should be designated. There's no question about that. But are we going to be meeting the requirements of this newly revised Ontario Heritage Act with this designation request? Any comments, feedback?
I've read the 9 requirements, of which 2 have to apply. I can't imagine we can't find 2 within those 9 that would apply. The Beaver Dams Park is also not an area open to development. So I can't imagine there would be any protests against designating that lock. Whether there, yes, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just looking at my council calendar. And Joe, just for your information, there's a meeting on March 21st and a meeting on April 11th. So you're right, the timeframe is very tight. One of those council meetings would require that we put a motion, an intent for a motion. So let's assume we did on the 21st. That would mean that it could be passed on the 11th of April, but then the next council meeting is already May 2nd, so right at the start. So those are 3 dates that are really critical if we need to make sure that we have council on board and have it passed. So would that be enough time if it was passed on May 2nd?
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't think so, because we've got 2 30-day periods to deal with.
Yeah.
The last 30 is the appeal, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, to object. Yeah, there's a 30-day period where the objections can be raised.
Yeah, so we've got to back up from July 1st.
Yeah.
June, May, we'd have to have it done. What was the April date?
April 11th.
April 11th. So the notice of motion would have to go in on March 21st, then the motion on the 11th, and then things would start to roll from there. So you're right, the time frame is very tight.
Yeah, it is really tight. Sarah has indicated to me that she can have the information to the committee. I might have spoken out of line, but I told her this was going to be a full contract, that this was not something that was something short term or short in compilation that she was going to present us. This was going to be a full blown report, which we do require. We're definitely going to need that, given that there's been changes to the act. So we've all got to be in favor of this.
Tim?
Yeah, Madam Chair, should we put a motion on the floor then to have Sarah do the investigating and the reporting so that we get things moving?
Joe, in case this cannot go through by Canada Day, are there alternative dates that are of a similar kind of that would also be part of a sort of general municipal celebration where this could be done at a later date? For instance, would there be Labor Day events held in Beaver Dams Park? I'm just being the devil's advocate here in case it can't go through that fast, Joe.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the only thing I can suggest is, and we're going to run out of time, but you'd have to check with the Community Events Committee to see what, they're just new too. They've just had their first meeting. They got to bounce ideas off themselves to see what they can go through with. And the only thing that probably is going to be on a recurring basis again this summer downtown is going to be the car shows that's coming in on a Friday. But other than that, I don't know what's going to be down in the park.
Yeah. And that's, of course, downtown, not in the park.
Yeah, exactly.
So shall we be optimistic and try and get this through by Canada Day, which of course would be a great date to do it because it would be soon. It would give heritage a lift. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So shall we? So I'm putting it to the rest of the committee. Yes, Eva?
I think that's a great idea. However, I think we should open ourselves up. And there is a 200th anniversary for Thorold that's coming up in 2024. This would be a wonderful opportunity to make this a centerpiece, if it has not already been made a centerpiece by Canada Day.
That's actually in case, out of some reason, this does not work we're going to shoot for Canada Day simply because this would be a no-brainer for the Heritage Committee. If it doesn't, out of some reason, we are blocked there and it doesn't happen, to designate a lock on the 200th anniversary of the ground being broken for the Welland Canal, is, of course, a date that would be extremely fitting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but shall we shoot for now for Canada Day?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, okay, so shall we pass a motion to have Sarah complete her research on block 25?
So moved.
Okay, Linda moves it. Can I have a second? Joe, okay, all in favor? All right, that's carried. All right. Okay, couple of more items on our work plan. Municipal cultural planning. We've already touched on that. Extremely important to make the city interested in heritage. And of course, I'm planning an ambush on you, Eva, if you would be willing to, at one point, I know you won't be here for the next meeting, but in the near-ish future, give the committee a sort of session about municipal cultural planning, and of course, even more importantly, to City Council.
Madam Chair, if I understand correctly, is it a separate presentation to this committee, or is it one presentation to this committee, including council and possibly other advisory committees such as
Yep. Tourism Advisory Committee should be this is up to discussion. It could be a sort of information session to the Heritage Committee and the Tourism Advisory Committee at the same time, so that doesn't have to be done twice. A presentation to City Council cannot be longer than 10 minutes. And
I'm sorry, say that again.
A presentation to Council cannot be longer than 10 minutes. So that would have to be very streamlined, and could maybe be done in combination of a heritage presentation to Council, so that they get the double whammy of the two going hand in hand.
Okay.
But Joe, I saw you raise your hand at one point, or were you just playing with your pencil?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I think I wouldn't tie the two together to council. They might have a hard time absorbing all that information at one time.
Well, what are you saying?
With the exception of Councillor O'Hare. But I understand, I think, Ava, you're probably kind of concerned that when it gets compressed to 10 minutes, what can you really put forward? It's unfortunate. Is there any opportunity to have the presentation any longer than the 10 minutes? I don't know. The others, like the Heritage Committee, Tourism Committee, I would think they'd have to be done separately and done, inserted into the agenda of when those committees do meet. My biggest concern is, it's going to be a wonderful presentation, but when it gets compressed to 10 minutes, when you're trying to hit the target audience that you really want to go after, how can you get that information to them in 10 minutes?
Tim?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So, Joe, I hear your concern. It's just the way it is in council. They'll basically put a timer on, and at around, shortly before 10 minutes, they will tell you you have one more minute. You can extend it a little bit, 11, 12 if you're lucky, but if you're hoping to do a 15, 20 minute, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it has to be really well prepared, focused, timed, practiced, and that's really how it is.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor O'Hare. The length of the presentation time, is that including questions from councillors? So
No.
how long can the questions come from councillor?
Till they run out of questions.
Oh, okay, there you go. You can work around that, Ava.
So you have to work a fee. We pay $5 per question or something.
Eva?
yes, I would very much like to support Joe's decision that, or suggestion that, no, we cannot combine the heritage and the municipal cultural planning. We've got to go with the municipal cultural planning, which is completely overarching to heritage, right? Because we have the arts that make up part of culture. We have our unique heritage that's part of the intangible, right? I'm German. There are people from all over the world that make up the population of Thorold. So for sure, municipal cultural planning on its own. And I think, Joe, was it you and I that did back and forth with email suggest that maybe we could also invite other committees to be part of the council?
I think you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say go for the big one. Yes, the presentation is focusing on council, but others who are also part of the presentation will hear the kinds of questions council are asking. Can I assume that people who are not with council could ask questions as well? Or will they just be absorbing and listening to what the dialogue is back and forth?
Cindy, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. They will not be asking questions. They would just be listening.
So
can anybody apply for participation status?
Through you, Madam Chair. I believe they could do like a joint presentation would be the only option for that.
Okay, but no questions?
No.
Okay, all right. Yes.
So if I could just add to that, if there is an interest following that council presentation, there is an interest from a committee to learn more about it, right? We can look at that carefully and make the right decision.
Yeah. But in that case, the presentation to council would be the presentation, and the committees like us, for instance, or the Tourism Advisory Committee, or whoever else is interested, can click into that council meeting and listen to the information. That is probably the best and most efficient way of handling it. Does it work with everyone? Do we agree that in the nearish future, we will have a presentation about municipal cultural planning to council, with committees listening in and getting the information as well? Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not too sure how many of the other committee members would actually sign in for that particular meeting to participate at the same time. I'd be more inclined for Ava to do a direct presentation to the separate committees, where they get an opportunity to ask questions if they need to get any answers they may have, or offer feedback or comments that might be important.
Yeah, that would just mean that Eva would have to do multiple presentations.
Yeah,
so,
unfortunately.
Comments, Eva?
Madam Chair, I think I'd be working up one presentation to be used several times. The presentations I've done thus far, I've done 2 of them. They're basically the same. One had, I don't know, 5 slides, and the other one had 3 slides. And it really gets to the heart of what municipal cultural planning is, but there are a few pieces that I've left out. Yeah, like mapping. I did not speak at all about mapping.
Okay. So, Tim.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, we're talking about 2 things here, the municipal culture planning presentation and the Heritage Thorold presentation. So are we putting one ahead of the other? Which one?
Well, I put that to you. I know what my preference would be, but any thoughts?
Well, my thought, the reason I had brought it up is because we're being faced with this bombardment of Bill 23, that maybe heritage should be directed to council right away. It's also, I'm going to assume it's a little bit easier for council to be convinced and educated on this. The broader municipal culture planning may be more involved, more challenging for them. For me.
Joe?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, Councilor O'Hare, that's a good point that you make about the heritage. We don't have the presentation ready at this time. I believe that Madam Chair had met with Craig Finley, and Craig was going to, I guess, provide the format that our chair would present to council. So there is a little bit of time involved in putting that together. And if I would make one further suggestion for the heritage presentation, that Madam Chair reach out to Winsome and perhaps engage her in putting together this presentation, with Winsome being the youngest of the committee members. I think it's an opportunity for us to show our younger generation is getting involved in heritage. We're not just a bunch of old people that have been living in old homes for all these years. So I'm glad that Winsome's not here, but I'm sure I think she'll jump on board with this. And I think it's a great opportunity to like I said, reach out to let people know that we're really working to get our agenda out there.
Yeah. Now, again, this will be a 10-minute presentation, so we basically have to concentrate on punchlines that will resonate with council, rather than going into details of heritage preservation. What we want is to get council on board with supporting heritage conservation. And yes, Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think what you're saying, that's a good reminder that you got to keep in mind when you're talking to Craig. He has done some talks and they are a little bit lengthier, but if he knows that he's got 10 minutes, then he's quite capable of zeroing in on the key points to dispel various myths that surround heritage designation.
He won't do the talk. I've already talked with him. I will do the talk, and but he has assured me that he would be supporting me in getting that talk ready. So that's where we left it for now. Now, I should say that I'm out of country from next Monday for 2 weeks. And so we have to find a time frame where I can prepare a presentation to council and involve Winsome and Craig if possible. And but this, what are the council meetings coming up, Tim, Councillor?
Well, tonight, of course, and the 21st of March.
Yeah, I'm not even back yet, Ben. I'm coming back on the 22nd.
Yeah, and then April 11th.
Shall we, yes, Eva?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would also offer my services to take a look at the presentation. Again, selling municipal cultural planning from 2004 until 2014. It was always to municipalities. And we ended up serving basically 3/4 of the population of Ontario. So I liked your reference to giving it a punch. It's got to be very, very positive, and heritage has to be seen as the most important thing, right, in the city of Thorold.
Yeah.
And why do we flock to Europe to see the heritage?
Yeah, well, I forgot that now, but I was actually going to quote you on that because you told me that before. You know, there we all go on our European vacations to look at their heritage, and we let ours deteriorate. Why is that? So, preserve our heritage. They can
Yes.
preserve theirs for us to
Anyway,
look at. They
I'm
can't
just
do
offering my
ours.
assistance if you need it.
Absolutely, and that's wonderful, and I will be very happy to make use of that. Thank you very much, Eva. Okay, so the April 11th council meeting, is that a possible date, or Joe?
Sure.
Yeah, so that would mean a motion to let me speak would have to be brought on the March meeting, right, Tim?
To you, Madam Chair, I don't think we'll need a motion. I think we just need to talk to the city clerk and apply for a presentation for that council meeting.
Okay, all right. All right, I'll talk about that with you, how I have to handle that. All right, so do we need to pass a motion that a heritage presentation is going to be prepared for probably the council meeting of April 11th, if we can get in at that time? Do we pass a motion about that? Yes, Sydney?
Through Madam Chair, I don't believe you would need a motion for that, no.
Okay, all right. So, all right, that's decided then. So now we've already talked about both municipal cultural planning and heritage Thorold presentations. Designation priorities on our work plan for the future. Obviously, our heritage list, non-designated heritage list needs to be made available and finalized by July 1st. So we will have to have a very close look at that. Unfortunately, with these new regulations, buildings that are now on that list, but where we can't see whether any, they might have any historical importance that is not visible through the architecture or the site, is not possible to ascertain. So as already has been mentioned by multiple societies, certain historical points like sites that are important to minority groups, underrepresented groups, unfortunately will probably fall by the wayside through this new regulation. We cannot make decisions other than on what these places look like at this point, unless we come by information about one of those sites by some other means that somebody tells us something about these sites that we do not know. Any comments about that?
No.
Eva?
Again, I'm curious. What I heard, I believe, at the first meeting we had, is that a co-op student put together the list, was hired and put together the list. Would there not be files associated with the final list that was created, basically the one pager, but files in behind on each of those properties?
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava, I believe the lady that was in charge of that project with Brock students, the files got transferred down to Mayholm at some point. This is the information I'm getting from Sarah King Head, and Sarah believes that those files got dispersed, and she's not too sure where they would exist. We've left it at that. Maybe we could talk to Sarah about it and see if she wants to put on her Sherlock Holmes hat and see if she can find out where those exist.
Well, what we need on our list right now for non-designated properties, they have to fulfill one of those 9 requirements. Right now, all that is on the list is the date on which the property was erected. On some of them, that's missing, and a brief description of what the property is. Many of them can probably be left on the list by maybe we add a little bit to the description, but some of the properties are very obviously interesting architecturally. Others might have more significance in the context of the neighborhood that they are in. But obviously, this is almost 100 properties on that list. Obviously, we lose that list in its entirety in 2 years' time, except for the places that we managed to designate in that time. We cannot possibly designate it, all of them, or even a majority of them. It will be a very small percentage if. So, Eva?
Well, may I suggest that we do a little bit of investigating, and if Sarah is the resource, the best resource, and you made mention of Bayhome, I'm not sure what that is, but let's at least reach out and see if we can get some more clarity on that. And if not, then it's plan 2. And we need to come to consensus on what plan 2 will involve.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava. Bayhome is, it's an old family farm property on Ontario Street in St. Catharines.
Oh, I know it well, okay.
Yeah, and it's got all the historical records for just about everybody. So you could reach out to them if you.
Okay, I will reach out to Bayhome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. There are some, Joe?
What I'll do is I'll go back into my emails and see if, I know Sarah mentioned her name, and I can forward that to you, Ava, and see if that can provide any help in finding a starting point. Yeah.
Perfect.
There are also properties on that list that are priorities that are basically no-brainers, but among the others, where a decision which ones do we keep on the list are more difficult, then additional research would definitely be of benefit. Eva?
Madam Chair, might Sydney have some information from archives? Because if this was a co-op student in the 80s, wow, that was a very long time ago. But might there be something in the archives of the city of Thorold?
Sydney?
Through you, Madam Chair, I definitely do not know that off the top of my head, but that is something I can look into to see if we have any records of anything.
Okay. Sydney was probably not even born yet then.
No, she was not.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ava, this was a Brock University project.
Yeah.
So the city wouldn't have any of that
Oh, wow, okay.
background information. This would have just come through. I don't know when Heritage Thorold would have received this information, if they got it right back at the very beginning of the start of the committee. Was it your husband that was the first chair?
I'm sorry. Yes, he was.
Was it your husband was the first chair, was he not?
Yeah, he was, and graduate of Brock. Mhm.
Okay, maybe see if he's
Maybe it's in our files.
He has to come out of retirement to find the.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes.
Okay. We have just caused some stress at the Baucom right now.
No stress.
Okay. Yeah. Other designation priorities obviously are our strategies. We will have to deal with the Heritage Act amendments with that respect, and any designation request or notice of intent that is put forward, we will be under a time crunch. That is just the way it is. And so for any, obviously the Beaver Dams lock is exceptionally fast, but any property that council is going to make a notice of intent on will have to be designated within a very short period of time. So those are issues that we have to be aware of at all time and not lose sight of. So that, yes, Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, when you're talking about the designations like the lock and other ones that we reached out to, I think we should get the Fernie House back on.
Absolutely.
And reach out to them now that we got a new committee. You and I can reach out to them and see if they want to, if we can renew interest in them moving forward.
Yeah. They have expressed interest in any case, and we will definitely get back in touch with them. And there's, yes, Linda? I can't hear you.
The Fernie House, that's the one on Carlton.
No, Welland Street North, with a big 200 or 300-year-old oak tree on the property.
Yeah, I think I took a picture of that.
You did, yes.
Yeah.
It's not designated, so it's not on the list right now, but it is a house on our sites.
Yeah,
Yes.
I do have a picture of that, yeah.
Okay. All right, then can we quickly move to the new business? We will handle this very quickly because nothing is underway yet, but it's coming. One is the Stone Store. It has been sold. I have talked to Sydney, no, not to Sydney, to Megan about this already, and I received an email from Sydney to get in touch with one of the owners, which I did. So there will be work done on that property. I have advised the owner or any plans for this property to be forwarded to the Heritage Committee. That I haven't received anything yet, though. She also asked about the history plaque, whether there was the Stone Store was getting one. I also told her that plaque already exists. It was just not installed yet because of weather issues, but then also said if work is done on this building, it might be a good idea to delay the installation of that plaque until that work has been done. Any thoughts about that? No? Okay. Trinity United Church, Joe already brought that up at the last meeting, but Matthew, the city clerk, forwarded an email from a board member of Trinity United Church to me, in which it was suggested that Trinity United might face closure, in which case the building would most likely be sold. And so that is something that might be coming. And obviously the same thing applies as with the Stone Store. Both the Stone Store and Trinity United are buildings designated under the Heritage Act. Just 1 second, Linda, I'll...
Fine.
And any planning or development permits that are requested for those properties should be forwarded to us. Linda?
As I understand, well, okay, I belong to the Lutheran denomination. And as I understand, if our church was closed because of there wasn't the membership or anything there, the building would be considered a property of Synod.
A property of what?
Of the Eastern Canada Synod, or they told it would be a property of the church hierarchy. I don't know if that's the same, like what happens with a Trinity as a United Church building. What happens when the congregation is closed? Like, does the congregation sell the building, or does the does the ownership of the building transfer to the Greater United Church in the province or in Canada?
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Linda, my understanding is the United owns the church and it's mortgaged to the congregation. Congregation can no longer afford to pay their mortgage. Right now, they're looking out to either coming to some kind of a shared agreement with St. Andrew's Presbyterian, or they've reached out trying to find the ownership of the Allenberg United Church, which we haven't found out yet. So it's still in the exploratory stages right now. They do know the Thorold Community Theater has been using Trinity for their performances. The theater has been given notification to vacate by April. They've taken all their stuff out, so it's between the congregation and the United to come to some kind of an arrangement as to what's going to happen with the congregation. But I don't know what the United will actually do with that building. They're not just going to sit there and leave it sit empty.
Yeah.
No.
In the same email, actually, about Trinity United, I was informed by this board member of Trinity United Church that the Allenberg United Church has recently been sold. I forwarded that to Megan and asked whether she knew whether that was true. Allenberg United Church also is a designated building, and if that building indeed has been sold, and there are plans with that property, then again, Heritage Thorold has to be made aware what these plans are. So, Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the church was sold a few years ago, and I don't think it's been used for anything. I know one time, one meeting, might have been before you and Councillor O'Hare got on our committee, Tom Russell had indicated that there was some roof damage to it that needed attention. That was brought forward to him by some community members. And he was looking into who was the owner at the time. And to this date, I don't know if the roof was ever repaired, or we have never been given any information as to who the owner is. But
so I assume this is a private ownership.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, okay.
But on a positive note, I was talking to John Henderson one day because I asked him if he had known anything about Trinity, because Trinity and the Friends of Beaver Dams have a connection with sharing meeting space. And then John had indicated to me that there was a lady on the board of directors for United Church, and she's involved with projects involving development of living facilities for the aged. So I just kind of jokingly said to John, I said, here's a perfect opportunity for the United Church to convert that church into small living accommodations for the elderly of Thorold, and they'll get revenue off the building.
Yeah, I personally think, well, if obviously, Linda, if the church were sold, then it would obviously be deconsecrated, and then reused for something else, which I personally, I'm not a churchgoer, so, but I personally think that's a great idea to redevelop these buildings in order to save them. Whether that will happen to Trinity United Church, I don't know. We also don't know at this point what happens to Allenberg United Church. It would be nice to have some kind of information whether that building just stands there and deteriorates. If the roof, for instance, is damaged. Sydney, did you lift your, no? I'm not, I'm a very suspicious person. I tend to right away think the worst, but maybe at one point we can find out who the new owner. Yes, Joe?
Sorry for interrupting, Madam Chair, but when we go out this afternoon to visit the Upper House, the church is just around the corner. Perhaps
Yeah.
you and I can, we'll stop and
Absolutely.
have a look,
Yeah,
take a walk
Okay.
around the property.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Are we done? This was a very long meeting. I apologize. It won't always be so long, Sydney or Ashley. Are there any more comments at this time about the Stone Store Trinity United? No? Okay.
I just have one comment.
Yeah.
So many of these older church buildings have a really difficult problem with accessibility. The problem of accessibility is there's just too many steps.
Oh, you think that might be.
So many of these older church buildings, the problems that they're having, or some of the problems that they're having, is the problem of accessibility. And they have older members who can no longer attend because the church is not accessible. You know, so that's just a comment. And I think it's probably when these buildings were built, accessibility wasn't an issue. So yeah,
Okay.
just a comment, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Roundtable discussion. Does anybody have any further comments? Joe?
If I could make one, this through you, Madam Chair, I would like to say that the Heritage Committee submit an impact statement, heritage impact statement to the City of Thorold regarding the recent proposal to develop a McDonald's at the corner of Sullivan and Pine Street. And I asked for this to be done because over the years, the City of Thorold has spent countless dollars, taxpayer dollars, putting into the budgets of tourism Thorold, Heritage Thorold, trying to promote tourism, trying to protect our culture, our heritage culture. The location of the proposed McDonald's is my objection. I don't object to McDonald's coming into Thorold. I object to the location. The drive-through entrance on Towpath overlooks a very historically significant area of Thorold, first and second Welland Canal, which in my mind, I believe we still have opportunities in that area to erect recognition plaques because the canal, you know, was basically buried. I went around St. Catharines to all the McDonald's and I looked around and every one of them is located in a high traffic commercial area. Every one of them. This will be the first one in this area that is going to be located so closely to residential areas and a school. I watched that council meeting and I could not believe that there's no requirement for a traffic study to be done. If you look at the time frame between 8 and 9 a.m. when people are going to be coming into that McDonald's for a coffee and their egg McMuffin and leaving, the amount of traffic coming into that area when you're going to have one crossing guard guiding those children across the street to the school, that's got to be addressed. The other thing that needs to be addressed is, and I'm looking at the kids right now, at lunchtime, when those kids take their break for lunch, how many are want to go across the street to McDonald's to get something? Because their parents might see the McDonald's and think, well, one day a week, I'm not going to pack a lunch. Here's some money for you to go over to McDonald's. Now we got to put a crossing guard out for lunchtime. You know, so when I get back to the location, the volume of traffic coming through there, in any McDonald's store, they're going to have sales targets that they want to meet every day. And those sales targets are going to be based on the average person's purchase price of every car coming through. So when you do the math and add up to how many cars are coming into that area, it's just not acceptable
Too
for
many.
the location. But if I get back to the heritage side of it, we've got an integrated transit system that's starting its early development stage. In a couple of years, when all these routes are linked and we're going to have more people using these buses, we're going to have more people coming into that Thorold transit stop.
Mhm.
And they're not always going to be getting off the bus, but these could be people that are going to their final destination. They're going to be sitting on that bus. They're going to take a look around. The BIA has 5 heritage banners, Prince of Wales heritage banners, that they're going to be installing on Towpath this summer. Those people are going to be sitting on that bus and they're going to look around. They're going to see a heritage banner on one side. They're going to look to the other side and they're going to see golden arches. And I think this is just not right when we want to sit there and say, we want to promote downtown Thorold. Our historic downtown Thorold is what we're trying to promote. There's definitely different options. If it was to be kept in that location, I would think that the city would really press for a residential building to be built like the original proposal was. It was a 3 or 4 story condominium unit for them to put McDonald's down on the ground floor if that's what the developer wants. But this goes a bit against the province and how they were originally after intensification. And this sets a dangerous precedent on that block because there are some older homes that they're rental over on Towpath. Once McDonald's comes in, John's Meats, if he ever retires, that house could be demolished. And next thing you know, it's just going to leapfrog down that whole block where it's all going to be commercial property, backsiding our downtown heritage district, which we really have to take a stand on protecting. The money that was spent refurbishing Front Street, what was that, $6-7 million to draw people down to see our beautiful downtown. $2 million on Beaver Dams Park. I mean, we want a tourist bus to come down and see what we're spending our money on. And that's culture, heritage. The shopkeepers on Front Street, they rely on tourists. We know that a lot of people that live in Thorold really don't shop downtown. We've got a lot of hair salons. We got to do a better job at attracting the right businesses. But if this McDonald's comes in and it plants its feet, it's going to be a major reversal. And it's just so sad that the majority of the council members, I didn't hear the right questions being asked when I sat in that meeting. That's my suggestion, that we do submit an impact statement.
Yeah.
Madam
Eva?
Chair, just for clarity, has the location been confirmed or is it one of several locations being considered?
I put that to the councillor after I've done. I don't think there are any other locations considered at this time. Tim?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, there aren't. This is the suggestion that Serge Carpino is proposing.
Okay.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess Councillor O'Hare and Ava, Serge Carpino owns the property, right?
Yeah.
And he is going to be leasing the property to whoever is going to hold the McDonald's franchise. Serge already has property in Thorold where he owns the land on the Tim Hortons at Ormond and Regent Street and leases. As far as another location, it's interesting because McDonald's doesn't go into a location where it's not going to make money. They've done their homework. I could see a better location, and that would be to put it over on Collier Road, south of Highway 58, where they're building a new fire hall. There's all sorts of multi-floored developments going in there with retail space on the bottom. All the growth is out there. it would be a gold mine for them to sit there, put the arches up in the air. People are driving by on Highway 58. They're going to see those signs. The area in question over there could accommodate the traffic coming through better than the region or the Sullivan and Pine area. So I looked at, when I went around to the various McDonald's, I was counting the seating capacity of all of them. Brock University, Pendale, 4th Ave, Ontario Street, Welland Ave, and the Outlet Mall. And the Brock University one is the smallest one. It has about 70 seats. And when you look at the population out in that area, 5,600 staff on Brock University, 19,000 students, regional headquarters, 4 Point Sheraton, Shaver Hospital. You got 30,000 people out in that area, and it's all drive-through.
Yep.
That's why it's the smallest one. The Ontario Street one is extremely large, but when you look at the amount of parking on the Ontario Street one, it's small also, even though it's got 100 seats, but their drive-through is really big. The Welland Ave one, you got a Walmart across the street. You know, these ones, they all have a lot. Their clientele is a lot of transient buyers. They've come down to shop for one day and they stop in and say at the McDonald's and then go away. This one is going to be relying on, they can't rely just on the people that are living in the area. There's got to be a high volume of traffic coming in to hit that McDonald's to make it successful. And that's my concern is it's totally wrong for the location in a number of reasons.
Eva?
Well, I would suggest then that perhaps a motion is needed here that there be a heritage impact statement drawn up and presented to council for presentation to, I don't know, who would receive that presentation? The owner of the property that is one of the location priorities?
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Eva. No, our impact statement is it's going to council and that's read to council on our position as a committee appointed by council, because we're advisors. So we're advising on that. I also reached out to the chair of the Tourism Advisory Committee, that the Tourism Advisory Committee also put forward an impact statement representing their committee, but I didn't hear anything back from them, and I don't know if they're moving forward on that at all, but they should as well.
If I may, Madam Chair, there was a project in the city of Markham. This is quite a few years ago in one of their major heritage districts, and McDonald's wanted to come in. They had absolutely made it clear they wanted to come in. And because the Heritage Committee is very, very strong in Markham, council turned McDonald's down unless they agreed to make modifications to their structure to celebrate and maintain the heritage atmosphere of that particular community. Anyway, McDonald's said, no, we're not doing that, and walked away. A week later, they came back with drawings, heritage drawings that were absolutely fabulous, that would fit their McDonald's nicely into this heritage district, and they're there today. So that's a heritage issue, right? Which we were not talking about in terms of this McDonald's.
Yeah.
Joe?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Eva. Yeah, Niagara Lake did the same thing several years ago with McDonald's when they wanted to come in. And they had them respect the architectural landscape when they built their facility. Slightly different location. You know, it's an area that can accommodate the traffic without interfering with the old town. But like you say, you agree this particular location, that's the key issue.
Yeah. The only thing. Yes, Linda.
I was going to say, I believe, I haven't been to St. Jacobs for quite a while, but I believe that McDonald's there fits fits in with the architecture of the village as well.
In terms of our mandate of preserving heritage, I don't know whether we have too much clout with traffic and the unsuitability of basically a 1950s strip mall establishment in the middle of downtown. I mean, whatever happened to the need for housing? I mean, that's what we would need in that particular location. However, how much credibility do we have as the Heritage Committee bringing those kind of issues to council? What Eva says, however, if this McDonald's does go through, and it, quite frankly, as much as I am against that, it probably will. If McDonald's agreed to building a structure that would fit into a historic downtown, that would be an improvement, wouldn't it?
For sure.
That doesn't mean we can't do a heritage impact statement. I'm all in favor of that. Yes,
Absolutely.
Councillor.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to Eva. Do you have any reports or articles from the Markham McDonald's that you were talking about?
Wow.
Yeah, that's okay. I can look it up. I just thought if you had something, I'd get you to send them to
Yeah,
me.
you know what? I did on my work computer, had all of that information, and it's all been, my work computer was stripped.
Okay.
And I couldn't transfer any files into my own computer.
I'll search around and see if I can find something.
Yeah, but there are other areas as well. I'm thinking of Port Dover, beautiful little historic community, seaside historic community. And I don't think it is the McDonald's, it was the Tim Hortons. Again, completely different style, which fits into the heritage of the area. And yeah, your presentation to council needs to really significantly pronounce the importance of that, right? Yes, here are the designated heritage properties, but there needs to be sensitivity when building is taking place, such as, right, you can point out this project, that it also reflects the heritage of the area, as opposed to its commercial, huge commercial, big yellow domes, their arches. So build that into the presentation that you're going to be writing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other?
Can I just say, I cannot picture a McDonald's on that corner
None of us can, Linda.
without a severe traffic problem in the community.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to put it there. It doesn't make sense to put it there because of heritage, but it doesn't make sense to put it there, period, without, it's going to be huge. There's not a lot of, there's too much traffic. There'd be too much traffic there for a McDonald's to be there in the community to be happy with it. I'm
sure some of the community will be happy with it, but it will create problems, and it certainly doesn't address our need for housing.
You're going to have a lot of congestion, right? A traffic congestion right at that corner, and I don't think it's not appropriate. That's all.
Okay. Tim, any councillor, any comments?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Then our next meeting will be on March 28th, 2023 at 10 in the morning.
Very good.
This was a 2.5-hour meeting. I thank you for your patience, Sydney and Ashley. It won't always be like this, but we had a lot to talk about in this first meeting. And I thank everybody who participated today. And if there's nothing further, then I will adjourn this meeting at 12:35. Okay.